October 12, 1944. 0430 hours. A thin moon still hung over the jagged spine of Peleliu's limestone ridges, and a humid, insect-heavy hush pressed down through the coconut palms. Corporal Tommy Reynolds, 1st Marine Division, lay prone in a slit trench carved into red soil, his breath coming slow and steady, each exhale fogging in the thin light. Beside him, Sergeant Eli Navarro, a veteran of Bougainville with laugh lines cut into his face, flipped open a small metal box and checked the oil on a rifle that the rest of the squad had teased him about since it arrived 2 weeks earlier. They called it the mail-order rifle, a lean, foreign-looking bolt-action with a polished walnut stock and an odd, narrow sight that didn't match the regulation M1 Garand slung over the other men's shoulders. When Navarro had picked it up in a field exchange, trading a case of C-rations and a pocket watch, the boys had laughed. "You're bringing a civilian toy to a war, Eli," Private Jackson had sneered. "Might as well send postcards." The jibe stuck. But at 0430, as the jungle's breath shifted and distant waves hissed against the reef, the laughter felt a long way off. Reynolds watched the polished bolt and the thin barrel, noted the rifle's lightness and the small iron sight that Navarro adjusted with practiced fingers. Its action was smooth, almost whispering when cocked. It's round, something like a .30-06, but with a European name, was neatly crimped in weathered brass. The rifle's stock bore a faint stamp in a language none of them could read. To the squad it was an oddity, an affectation. To Navarro, who had grown up as a hunter in New Mexico before enlistment, it was home. The night held its breath and then shifted. A faint rat cheep in the underbrush, a radio stuttering somewhere in the line, a bugle note far down the ridge. Somewhere to the west, near the coral cliffs where the Japanese had established spider holes and spider webs of razor wire, a thin, high-pitched report answered like a whispering apology. The men's heads snapped up. The sound was not the dull bark of a mortar or the heavy staccato of a bar. It was the metallic tinkle of a single rifle round finding its mark and then falling into the leaves. "Sniper," Navarro breathed, eyes narrowing into the gray. The men moved without the clumsy trampling of amateurs. 2 steps, freeze. 2 steps, freeze. Shadowed ghosts sliding through palm trunks. The squad's standard issue M1s were racked and ready, but their weight and cyclic rate were designed for the open fields of Europe and the sudden runs of island combat, not the slow, patient chess of a single hidden enemy. Reynolds crawled forward on his belly, palms slick with sweat despite the cool air. He could taste the iron tang of metal and the salt bruising the air from the ocean farther out. Somewhere ahead, a narrow trail cut through fern and vine where men had carried stretchers and supplies the week before. The sniper could be beneath a banyan root, perched in a fork, or dug into a shallow foxhole with a single twig for a sight. The rules of jungle hunting were invisible and lethal. Navarro kept the mail-order rifle steady, sighting low and slow through that unfamiliar notch. His jaw worked. He breathed in a long, slow line and exhaled as if easing a trapped animal out of a jar. The others watched him, tension coiling in each man's shoulders. No one laughed now. At the fringe of the squad's vision, the first glimmer of muzzle flash punched a short starburst from the tree lean and then vanished. Private Jackson hissed and slammed his M1 prone, scanning, thumb poised on the trigger. But the angles were wrong. The anti-air and artillery drills they practiced for beaches and fields had taught them to fire in bursts, usefully clumsy in the face of a single patient shooter. "Hold," Navarro whispered. He did not sound like a man who had been mocked. He sounded like the hunter who had spent winter dawns stalking jackrabbits by the Pecos, the man who knew the rhythm of breath and the weight of a small, precise aim. The mail-order rifle fit into his shoulder like a thought, not an instrument. He eased the bolt forward and clicked off the safety with a thumb that did not tremble. A twig snapped, soft, deliberate, near a dead pandanus frond. The sniper had repositioned. The squad's shadows tightened, the men folding into the earth like low beasts. Navarro exhaled on the twig snap, and then a small, hard ping echoed back from the undergrowth. The sniper's shot had clipped a stray coconut husk and thrown a shard of bark into the air. The men flinched, pulse doubling. Navarro's sight found a narrow window through curtains of palms, a pale cheek, a sliver of the enemy's rifle barrel, a band of cloth camo that matched the earth. He ranged silently, thumbed the safety again, and squeezed. The sound the mail-order rifle made was not the rattling bark of semi-automatic fire. It was a clean, absolute note. A single bell cut through humidity. The sniper's head snapped back, a slow domino, and then he toppled. For a breath and a half the jungle held its shock. Then the sniper training in other positions answered. 3, 4 replies, each a sharp punctuation from the foliage, and the men realized they were not alone. Navarro did not flinch. He worked fast now, bolt back, brass ejected, bolt forward with the impatience of an animal that smelled blood. Each shot that left the odd, neat barrel landed with a precision that seemed impossible for a man who had laughed at the rifle's banality. Corporal Reynolds felt historical preconceptions shift inside him like tectonic plates. What had been a joke, mail-order foolery, was becoming a tool with teeth. Men who had mocked the rifle leaned in, eyes bright not with ridicule, but with a raw, hungry respect. The morning's first light was inching through leaves now, burning away the pretense of safety. Somewhere beyond the ridge the rest of the island slept in uneasy ignorance. Here, in a small hollow of red soil and broken fern, a private trade and a mocked rifle were starting to write a different kind of legend. October 12, 1944, 0610 hours. The sun finally pushed above Paliliu's jagged coral ridges, flooding the jungle with long bars of molten orange. The heat thickened instantly, turning every breath into the taste of hot copper. Corporal Reynolds wiped sweat from his eyelids, peering up through palm fronds still trembling from the last exchange of rifle fire. The Japanese snipers had gone silent, but silence on Paliliu never meant safety. It meant they were repositioning. Sergeant Navarro slid back next to Reynolds, the long, slender rifle cradled across his knees. The polished walnut stock had lost its sheen beneath sweat and soil, but its bolts still moved like butter, smooth and certain. Most rifles sounded angry when fired. This one sounded sure. First one's down, Navarro murmured, voice low and even. But he wasn't alone. They're doing leapfrog retreats. Reynolds nodded. He knew the tactic. The Japanese sniper teams on Paliliu worked in pairs or trios, shifting positions every time one fired. They didn't fire to kill. They fired to invite movement, to make a man lift his head, to make him look up, even for a heartbeat. That heartbeat was usually fatal. Captain Leland crawled across the dirt toward them, face streaked with mud. Navarro, Reynolds, you two are on point. We can't advance the line until those positions are cleared. Get eyes on their nest. Remove them. Reynolds felt the weight of the order settle into his chest like a stone. Their squad already had 5 wounded in the last 2 days alone. No one wanted to lose more men to invisible ghosts in the foliage. But sending 2 men after trained snipers in this terrain, it felt like stepping into the throat of a wolf. Navarro simply nodded, almost too calm. Aye, sir. Reynolds swallowed. Aye. They moved out slowly, hunched low, boots sinking into mud warmed by the newborn sun. The jungle smelled of sap and salt and decay. Lizards scurried through vines overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a wounded Marine moaned. The ridge loomed above them, its coral sides riddled with caves that could hide 10 men, or one perfectly placed rifle. Navarro stopped abruptly, raising 2 fingers. Reynolds froze. A faint metallic click, almost inaudible, carried down from a boulder crevice 30 yards ahead. Safety off, Navarro whispered. Right side. High angle. Reynolds strained his eyes, seeing nothing but tangled vines and jagged coral. Then, like a magician revealing a hidden card, a sliver of light winked from inside a narrow crevice. A reflection off a rifle scope. Got him, Navarro breathed. He did not raise himself higher. He did not shift dramatically. He simply adjusted his elbows, braced against damp earth, and let the forest settle around him. Down the ridge, a breeze rustled banana leaves, carrying away the humidity for half a heartbeat. Navarro fired. The sound was soft, almost polite. The effect was brutal. A crimson spray flickered from the crevice, and a helmet rolled down the ridge like a kicked bull. The jungle went dead still. Reynolds stared at Navarro with something like disbelief. That's 2, Navarro muttered, already working the bolt. But the 3rd will be angling for revenge. The words were barely out before a round cracked past Reynolds's ear, tearing a strip from the tree behind him. He dropped, pressing his face into the dirt. The enemy sniper was good, fast, precise, and angry. Navarro didn't panic. Instead, he slid downslope, body almost flat against the earth as he used roots and rock to break up his silhouette. Reynolds followed, heart pounding. They circled wide, using the rising sunlight as a weapon. The Japanese sniper would be looking into the glare. Every glint of the morning sun would sting his eyes, distort his judgment. Navarro angled toward a mound of twisted banyan roots, lifted his rifle, and waited. Minutes passed. The heat grew savage. Mosquitoes buzzed like needles. Sweat rolled down their necks, soaking collars, turning the earth beneath them to paste. Then a breath, a tiny exhale, the faintest shift of brush as someone adjusted their aim. Navarro fired first. For a moment, nothing moved. Then something slumped against the inside of a broken log, a shape that had been alive a second ago. Reynolds exhaled shakily. 3 snipers, in one morning, he whispered. Navarro shrugged lightly. Hunted larger game back home. Their return to the platoon was met with stunned looks, a few disbelieving whistles, and Private Jackson, who had mocked the rifle the loudest, staring wide-eyed at Navarro's weapon like it had suddenly grown fangs. But the day wasn't done. Their captain pointed to a map scratched in the dirt. Intelligence spotted more movements along this ridge. For maybe 5 additional nests. You boys just opened a corridor. Now we keep pushing. Reynolds felt exhaustion chew at his legs, but Navarro's expression stayed steady, the faint confidence of a man whose world, the world of patient, deadly aim, had only just begun to make sense to everyone else. They had killed 3 snipers so far. They didn't know it yet, but by the end of the 4th day, Navarro's mail-order rifle would be credited with eliminating 11. And legends like that don't unfold quietly. October 13th, 1944, 0515 hours. The sky over Polilliu was still the color of wet ash when Corporal Reynolds and Sergeant Navarro crawled back toward the forward line. They had slept less than 3 hours. If shallow, twitching half-dreams counted as sleep at all. The jungle didn't rest, and neither did the snipers. The moment they neared the command post, Captain Leland was already waiting, sleeves rolled, a map stretched across a crate illuminated by 2 dim lanterns. Navarro, he said without preamble, you're going back up the ridge. Reynolds blinked in disbelief. Sir, we cleared 3 nests yesterday. And 6 more opened overnight, Leland cut in. They're coming out of caverns we didn't know existed. They have overlapping fields of fire. Every time we send a patrol through the corridor you cleared, someone gets hit. He tapped a small X carved near a limestone bluff. We need the ridge neutralized. You're the only one who's been able to pin them before they relocate. Navarro adjusted the sling of his rifle, eyes flicking over the terrain. No complaint. No hesitation. Just calculation. Reynolds clenched his jaw. I'm going with him. Leland nodded. You 2 work best as a pair. Move in 30. And take more rounds this time. If your lucky stick there keeps doing the impossible, you'll need them. They moved out under low clouds, the jungle soaked and steaming from last night's rainfall. Water dripped through broad palm, leaves like 1,000 clocks ticking out of sync. Navarro tested the bolt of his quirky rifle again, the smooth metallic click almost comforting now. Ahead, the ridge rose like a wounded beast, pitted, scarred, torn open by mortars and machine gun fire. It was a maze of razor-sharp coral, dense cover, and hidden slits where a sniper could wait for hours, motionless, breathing through a hollowed reed if necessary. Reynolds whispered, They know we're coming. Navarro nodded. Good. Makes them impatient. He said it as if impatience were a weakness he could smell. As they neared the central incline, a faint whistle cut through the air. Reynolds froze. That wasn't a bird. It was the soft, deliberate inhale of someone steadying their aim. Left, Navarro murmured, and dove behind a fallen palm. The sniper's shot cracked a heartbeat later, blowing apart the bark where Navarro's head had been. Reynolds dropped behind a boulder, heart pounding. He raised his M1, scanning, but the angle was wrong again. These Japanese shooters were masters of invisibility. They dug shallow firing pits into shadows, coated their helmets with moss, wrapped themselves in burlap dyed to match the terrain. But Navarro didn't rely on sight alone. He's not in the tree line, he whispered. He's below it. Reynolds frowned. Below? Navarro pointed with his chin. Cave mouth. Low-angle shot. He's firing up. Reynolds squinted. The cave looked like nothing, just a black opening beneath a curtain of vines. But then he saw it. The slightest pulse of reflected light. Not enough to reveal a rifle outright, just enough for a hunter to catch the movement of a predator. Navarro exhaled and took aim. The mail-order rifle fired once. The jungle swallowed the sound, but the echo from the cave was unmistakable. A sharp, hollow thud followed by a body collapsing onto rock. "That's 4, Reynolds whispered. But the ridge answered almost instantly. A second shot snapped overhead, so close it clipped the tip of Navarro's sleeve. This time the sniper wasn't hiding deep. He was mobile, shifting tree to tree, trying to flank. Navarro ducked behind a tangle of ferns and began scanning upward. Reynolds crawled along the base of a boulder to draw fire, and it worked. Another shot struck the stone inches above his helmet, spraying chips of coral across his cheek. The sniper's rhythm was fast, too fast. He was confident, aggressive, maybe thinking he could pin both Americans and finish them cleanly. Navarro locked onto the source of the shot, somewhere above a cracked banyan trunk where a mess of roots formed a natural lattice. He whispered, "Hold him looking at you." Reynolds swallowed hard. "Yeah, sure. No pressure." He lifted his helmet just an inch above the rock. The sniper fired instantly. Navarro had already taken the shot. His round punched directly through a clump of moss on the branch, and a man tumbled downward, rifle still clutched in his hands. He hit the jungle floor with a dull, final thud. 5, Navarro said quietly. Reynolds stared at him. How are you doing this?" Navarro wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "My uncle used to say, patience isn't slow. It's precise." Reynolds let out a breathless laugh. "Your uncle ever fight a war?" "Only against coyotes. They're quieter." They pushed deeper into the ridge, working systematically, clearing blind spots and angles with a methodical rhythm. By noon, the heat was crushing. Sweat ran like warm rain down their backs. But Navarro kept going, listening for breath, listening for movement, listening for silence that felt wrong. At 1,310 hours, he dropped sniper number 6, a camouflaged ghost hiding in a hollow tree trunk. At 1,420 hours, he took number 7, just a faint silhouette against a limestone wall. By dusk, the Marine lines were finally able to move forward. Captain Leland stared at Navarro's rifle like it was some kind of supernatural relic. 7 in 40 hours, he murmured. "I've seen platoons take a week to clear half that number." Jackson, the man who mocked the rifle hardest, walked up silently and pressed a fresh cloth of gun oil into Navarro's hand. No jokes this time. No smirking. Respect. But Navarro just shrugged, wiping dirt from the rifle's wooden stock. "They'll send more tomorrow," he said quietly. "Snipers work in clusters." Reynolds stared at him. "You're planning to go back up there?" Navarro didn't answer. He just chambered another round, lifted his canteen, and prepared for day 3. October 14th, 1944. 0440 hours. The jungle was still pitch black when Reynolds jolted awake to the distant crack of rifle fire echoing along the ridge. It wasn't directed at them yet, but it told him everything he needed to know. The Japanese snipers were adjusting again, and dawn hadn't even broken. Navarro was already sitting up, tightening the sling on his rifle, the long wooden stock resting against his leg. His face was calm, far too calm for a man who'd slept maybe 2 hours. He looked exactly as he had the day before, steady, unreadable, coiled like a spring without tension. "You hear that?" Reynolds murmured. "Yep," Navarro replied. "New angles. At least 2 shooters. One of them's impatient." "How do you know that?" "He fired twice." "Snipers don't fire twice unless they're nervous." Reynolds rubbed his hands over his face. "You're going to get a nickname at this rate." Navarro shrugged. "As long as it's not mail-order moron, I'll take it." When they approached Captain Leland's post, they found a group of Marines staring at the ridge like it was a living thing. Leland turned, looking grim. "They're probing us," he said. "Testing for weak points. Reports say the enemy brought in more crack shots from the northern caves." Reynolds frowned. "Sir, how many?" "3 confirmed. Maybe 4. Jackson, standing nearby, muttered, "They're hunting him now." His meaning was obvious. Navarro had killed 7 of theirs. Now they wanted the hunter. Leland pointed to the slope. "Your job hasn't changed. We need the ridge cleared before reinforcements arrive." If you two can't hold them, we'll lose the corridor we bled for. Reynolds nodded slowly. Navarro simply shouldered his rifle and walked. They climbed the ridge before sunrise, moving through shadows so dense they swallowed their own outlines. The air was thick with the scent of crushed fern and damp limestone. Every few steps, a drop of water plinked onto Navarro's helmet from the canopy above, sounding far too loud in the tense stillness. At 0520 hours, they reached the first overlook, a shallow basin of red mud mixed with rainwater. That's when the first sniper fired. The bullet cracked between Navarro and Reynolds, ripping a fern in half and slicing through the mist. Reynolds dove instinctively, but Navarro didn't. He remained perfectly still, head slightly turned, listening. Reynolds hissed, "Navarro, get down." Navarro raised one hand without looking. "He's not aiming at us." Reynolds stared in disbelief as Navarro slowly pivoted his body, angling the rifle toward a cluster of vines near the upper ledge. "He's aiming at movement," Navarro whispered. "Probably a decoy." And just like that, almost lazily, he fired. The shot struck something hidden beneath the vines, something that jerked violently, then toppled down the rocky slope with a dull thud. Reynolds blinked. You knew." "Snipers set bait," Navarro said. "Night flares. Tide branches. Small mirrors. Game hunters do the same with coyotes. Trick the eye. But the breath? A man's breath? That you can't fake." They moved again. At 0600 hours, two more shots rang out. Rapid, coordinated, crossfire. Reynolds dove into a ditch, feeling mud splash up his neck. These two were working as a pair, a more dangerous formation, a spotter and the triggerman. Navarro whispered, "They're good." Reynolds answered, "So are you." The first shot came from above, a crack from behind a shattered palm trunk. Navarro fired once and silenced it. 8. The second sniper retreated instantly, shifting positions with trained discipline. They chased him along the slope for 15 minutes, the jungle turning brighter, then hotter, then blindingly humid. Every breath tasted like steam. Finally, Navarro spotted him. Not by sight, by rhythm. He raised his hand. "Wait." Reynolds froze. A soft tick came from beneath a moss-covered ledge. Not metal, not movement. Teeth. The sniper was biting down on something. A strip of leather or cloth to steady his breathing. Navarro had heard it before, years ago, hunting coyotes outside Santa Fe. He fired. The sound was quiet. The kill was not. 9. Reynolds exhaled shakily. "They're gonna think you're some kind of ghost." Navarro shrugged. "Ghosts don't miss." The jungle shifted then, an odd silence, heavy and unnatural. Something was wrong. Reynolds felt it first, a gut twist that made him reach instinctively for his M1. Then, a shot. Close. Too close. The bullet tore across Navarro's sleeve, ripping cloth and skin. Reynolds shouted and tackled Navarro behind a boulder as a second shot shattered the limestone edge above them. Chips rained down like hail. This sniper was different. Aggressive. Cold. Calculated. A marksman trained for this exact kind of duel. Reynolds whispered, "This isn't a regular sniper." Navarro nodded. "No, he's a counter-sniper." They stayed low, silent, listening, waiting for the smallest clue. The shot came, not at them, but at a shadow behind them. The sniper was baiting. Navarro steadied his rifle. "He's good," Navarro whispered. Reynolds swallowed. "Can you get him?" Navarro reset his stance. "Don't need to get him. Just need him to breathe wrong." Seconds passed. The jungle held its breath. Then the faintest shift, one leaf settling differently in the breeze. Navarro fired. The shot echoed through the ridge like a closing door. 10. Reynolds grabbed Navarro's arm. "You're bleeding. Just a graze." Navarro, "That's." Reynolds, "If I can still see, I can still shoot." They made it back to camp just after 1600 hours, both exhausted, both drenched in sweat and blood. Marines watched them return in silent awe. Jackson whispered to another private, "That rifle, it ain't mail order. It's death on delivery." Navarro ignored him. He sat quietly, cleaning the rifle with slow, deliberate strokes. Only Reynolds saw the tremor in his hands. Navarro had killed 10 snipers, and one remained, the most dangerous one yet. October 15, 1944, 0430 hours. The ridge was cloaked in a misty gray, the remnants of night clinging to every palm and coral outcrop. Sergeant Navarro and Corporal Reynolds crouched low, scanning the jungle floor and the jagged limestone cliffs. The previous day's encounters had left both men exhausted, yet the intelligence briefings were clear. More enemy snipers had been spotted moving into newly fortified positions along the northern slope. Captain Leland approached quietly, his expression taut. "They've brought in reinforcements," he whispered. "Reports say at least 3 more snipers, and they're coordinating with hidden machine gun nests. This isn't just an ambush, it's a trap." Navarro examined his mail-order rifle, fingers tracing the polished stock as if drawing resolve from it. "Then we adapt," he said simply, a quiet steel beneath his words. Reynolds, tense but trusting, nodded. They moved carefully along a narrow path carved into the ridge, each step calculated, every sound in the jungle scrutinized. A faint crunch in the underbrush caught Reynolds' attention. He froze. Navarro pressed a finger to his lips, eyes narrowing. 2 figures emerged from the mist, crawling into flanking positions, expertly camouflaged, with eyes trained on the ridge. They weren't immediately visible as snipers, only shadows shifting in the gray dawn. Navarro's voice was a whisper. "They're testing our reactions. Move fast and slow. One wrong step, and they fire. We have to bait them, force a shot, reveal positions, then strike." Minutes became hours as the 2 men advanced methodically. Navarro fired once, a soft but deadly ping, and one sniper went down before he could even pull the trigger. The second sniper tried to reposition, moving silently along a small ridge covered in vines and coral shards. Reynolds covered Navarro, and the rifle's precise rounds struck true again. By midday, both had neutralized the new sniper threat, but the tension didn't dissipate. Navarro's mail-order rifle had proven itself repeatedly, yet the jungle continued to whisper secrets of hidden enemies. Each step forward revealed potential ambush points, deep caves, overhanging roots, and sharp limestone ledges that could conceal a sniper's deadly aim. Captain Leland, watching from a distance, muttered to a nearby Marine, "I've never seen a weapon and a man work together like that." Navarro wiped sweat from his brow, the rifle ready for the next shadow. "We're not done," he murmured. "The ridge still has secrets." October 15th, 1944. 0700 hours. The morning mist had begun to lift, revealing the jagged terrain of Poliliu's northern ridge. Navarro and Reynolds pressed forward cautiously, knowing the enemy had reinforced their positions not only with snipers, but with booby traps, punji stakes hidden beneath foliage, tripwires connected to mines, and improvised explosive devices carefully concealed in rock cavities. Reynolds moved first, scanning the path ahead. "Every step feels like walking through a minefield," he muttered, voice barely audible over the whispering jungle. Navarro's eyes didn't waver. He raised a hand, signaling Reynolds to stop. His keen senses had detected the faintest disruption in the leaf litter, a shadow across the mud, a subtle shift in the fern fronds. "Tripwire," Navarro whispered. He knelt, carefully using a broken branch to hook the wire and flip it aside. One wrong move, and a deadly spike or mine would have ended their progress. "These aren't just snipers. They want to slow us, make us careless," he said. The men advanced slowly, systematically clearing every suspicious patch of earth and foliage. Navarro's rifle was ever present, sighting potential sniper positions as he moved, his instincts honed from 3 days of relentless hunting. Each shot he fired was deliberate, precise, neutralizing a hidden sniper or suppressing a sniper attempting to relocate. By late morning, they had cleared 3 sniper positions in addition to neutralizing multiple traps. Sweat soaked their uniforms, and the tropical sun turned the red clay of the ridge into a viscous paste underfoot. The noise of distant artillery and the occasional machine gun fire added a tension that pressed down on them like a physical weight. Despite the danger, Navarro's focus never wavered. Every shadow, every rustle in the jungle, became part of his awareness. Reynolds began to see the rifle in a new light, not just a tool, but an extension of Navarro himself. Where men had once mocked the weapon, it was now a symbol of survival, precision, and relentless determination. As they neared the ridge summit, a faint flicker of movement caught Navarro's eye, a sniper attempting to crawl along a concealed ledge to flank them. With calm precision, Navarro fired, and the enemy was down before they could complete their maneuver. Reynolds exhaled slowly, realizing that the mail-order rifle had turned a deadly game of cat and mouse into a battlefield advantage that no standard weapon could match. October 15th, 1944. 0930 hours. The ridge's summit loomed ahead, jagged coral and tangled roots forming natural fortifications for any hidden enemy. Navarro and Reynolds moved cautiously, aware that the Japanese snipers would use every trick at their disposal. False trails, decoy movements, and carefully placed shadows meant to lure them into deadly fire. Navarro paused, lowering himself behind a large boulder. "I hear breathing," he whispered. "Not wind. Not animals. Human." Reynolds froze, straining to hear over his own pounding pulse. Through the jungle's dense foliage, he caught the subtle hiss of an exhale, followed by the faintest snap of a twig underfoot. The sniper was patient, hiding within inches of their line of advance, waiting for the perfect moment. "Remember," Navarro said, "he wants us to move. We stay still, he exposes himself." Minutes passed like hours. Sweat dripped from Reynolds' brow, each drop mingling with the dirt and blood of earlier skirmishes. Then, a slight movement, a sleeve brushing against a leaf, revealed the enemy's position. Navarro raised his mail-order rifle with deliberate care, lining up the shot with the same precision that had defined the last 3 days. The rifle cracked sharply in the morning air. The sniper froze, then collapsed silently among the undergrowth. Navarro's eyes scanned the summit carefully, leaving no space unchecked. Reynolds exhaled, his hands shaking slightly from both relief and adrenaline. 11 total, Navarro muttered, almost to himself, surveying the cleared ridge. "All gone. Every single one." Reynolds looked at him in awe. "You did it. For days. 11 snipers. That rifle, it saved lives." Navarro lowered the weapon, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Around them, the jungle seemed to hold its breath, the last whispers of enemy fire now gone. The ridge was finally secure, and the nightmare of constant invisible threats had ended. Captain Leland arrived shortly after, surveying the cleared terrain. "The ridge is ours," he said, voice heavy with disbelief. "I've never seen a Marine, and a rifle, work like that. You've changed the game today." Navarro allowed himself a faint, weary smile. "Just doing my job, sir." As the sun climbed higher, burning away the lingering mist, Reynolds realized that the once-mocked mail-order rifle had become more than a weapon. It was a legend, forged in the fire of relentless combat, precision, and survival. October 15th, 1944. 1,200 hours. The ridge was quiet now, the only sounds the occasional rustle of leaves and distant artillery far below. Navarro and Reynolds returned to the Marine command post, their uniforms soaked, faces streaked with mud, sweat, and blood. Fellow Marines gathered around, a mixture of awe, disbelief, and silent respect in their eyes. Captain Leland approached, placing a firm hand on Navarro's shoulder. "I've seen many men fight, Reynolds," he said, "but I've never seen anyone, handle a rifle the way you did. You cleared that ridge almost single-handedly. 11 confirmed kills. For days. This will go down in history." Navarro shook his head, brushing dust from his uniform. "Sir, it wasn't just me. Reynolds kept me alive too. We did it together." Private Jackson, who had once mocked the mail-order rifle openly, approached last, hands trembling slightly as he offered a clean patch of gun oil. I was wrong," he admitted softly. "That rifle, it's incredible. You're incredible." Reynolds placed a hand on Navarro's shoulder, smiling faintly. "He always was. We just got to see it." Navarro's gaze drifted toward the ridge, now cleared of snipers, littered only with remnants of the enemy's traps. The weight of 4 days of hunting, danger, and constant tension pressed on him, heavier than any rifle could ever feel. "It's over," he said quietly. "But war doesn't end here. There's always another ridge, another mission, another life at stake." The sun now burned down on Polilliu, turning the red clay of the ridge into deep ochre. Marines cleaned their weapons, checked ammunition, and tended to minor wounds. But for Navarro, the memory of every shot, every hidden enemy, every narrow escape lingered like an invisible weight. Even as he finally lowered his rifle, allowing himself a brief moment of rest, he knew that what had begun as a mocked, mail-order rifle had become something else entirely, a tool of survival, precision, and legacy. As the camp settled into the uneasy calm of victory, whispers began spreading among the Marines. The ghost of the Ridge, a name that would follow Navarro, his rifle, and the legend of those 4 relentless days for the remainder of the war. October 16, 1944. Poliliu's morning was unusually quiet. The ridge, once a deadly labyrinth of snipers and traps, now lay empty, silent except for the distant lapping of waves and the occasional bird call. Navarro sat outside the command post, his rifle resting across his knees, and stared at the terrain he had cleared. Every shadow, every tree, every nook had been a potential threat just a day before. Now, it was a testament to survival and precision. Captain Leland approached with a clipboard in hand, eyes scanning reports brought in by other squads. "Navarro, you and Reynolds saved countless lives up there," he said. "Intelligence is recommending both of you for commendations. This story will reach headquarters. Your skill with that rifle is being recognized across the division." Navarro shook his head slightly. "I did what anyone would do for their brothers, sir. The rifle helped, but it was the training, the focus, and the teamwork that mattered." Reynolds, sitting beside him, nodded. "Still, 11 snipers in 4 days. That's something else." News of Navarro's exploits quickly spread through the battalion. Men who had once laughed at the mail-order rifle now treated it with reverence, passing stories of its deadly precision from squad to squad. For the Marines, the rifle became symbolic, not of an object, but of how a single, determined Marine could shift the tide of danger and inspire those around him. As the day wore on, Navarro allowed himself a rare moment of reflection. He cleaned his rifle meticulously, every motion deliberate, almost ritualistic. Each brass casing he ejected during those 4 days had been a tiny victory. Each shot fired had been measured, calculated, and purposeful. He understood something deeper now. War was more than tactics and firepower. It was patience, precision, and the weight of responsibility for every life in your unit. And for those 4 days on the ridge, Navarro's mail-order rifle had transformed from a joke to a legend, a silent witness to courage, skill, and the unyielding will to survive. Reynolds leaned back, glancing at Navarro. "You think they'll ever stop calling you the ghost of the ridge?" Navarro gave a faint smile, almost wistful. "No, and I hope they don't. It's not about me. It's about what we did to keep each other alive." The sun dipped low behind the ridge, casting long shadows across the cleared battlefield. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of artillery faded, leaving only the rustle of leaves and the weight of history. For days had changed everything, and the legend of Navarro and his mail-order rifle would echo far beyond Poliliu, a story of skill, courage, and relentless determination in the heart of the Pacific War.